p.m. I'm excited to see everyone on today. So why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves? My name is Ismael Rivera, also known as Izzy, and I'm part of the board, or the advisory board.
I'm
Nicole?
Steve Hill, and I'm part of the advisory board. The recorder.
Nicola Day O'Brien, District 3. I'm present. Jamie Dillon, District 2. Present.
Ping, a new member for the committee, looking forward to learning everything from everybody.
Toya, new member as well. Really just looking forward to and just interacting and hopefully making a difference in the city.
Greg Baker, Director of Neighborhood Development.
I'm Rena Fromm, staff liaison.
Okay. So today we're gonna do a quick overview of the minutes from last meeting, which were set February 11th. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at those over and had any either changes or suggestions, or if everyone approves of those minutes. So
I
if no
have
one,
no changes, so I
No comment.
propose that we pass them.
okay, does anyone want to make a motion to accept those minutes as they are?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as they are.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone want to second them?
I will second that.
Any objections or? Nope. Okay, everyone say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Perfect. Okay. So I think Steve, you're gonna do an overview, or Lena, on year 51 funded projects in progress.
Probably Lena, because we haven't really gotten much updates from that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Lena, why don't I run through this, and if there's any sort of clarifications or questions, you can kind of fill in. This is a PowerPoint that we put together about the past projects. So,
Excited.
so can you go to the next slide, please?
Mhm.
Yeah, so Lena put this together at my request, and this kind of just gives an overview of the number of applicants that we had the prior year, those that were awarded and contracted as of February 1. So folks need to know that even though folks or entities, subrecipients as we call them, are given grants, they don't always get contracted right away. Sometimes there's delays on their end, sometimes there's delays on ours, sometimes there's an organic process of just sort of coming up with the content of the contract itself, particularly for newer activities. And then there's other things like facilities and whatnot that don't contract right away. So you can see we had a total allocation that I'm hoping was at the penny or below, or if not slightly below our cap by HUD, which was 613,340.
Mm-hmm.
And as of February 1st, we've drawn almost 300,000 of that. So we're not too far off the mark in terms of like where we should be. If you just look at it like even Steven kind of 50-50 split in terms of the CDBG year, that isn't always the way we look at it. But if you look at it that way, it's not too bad of a situation to be in. The facilities, and that's for the services. For the facilities, like I said before, I believe their facilities can go over more than 1 year. And these are more complex projects that are also kind of beholden, especially in this part of the country. For those of you that are still digging yourself out from the snowstorm, you know that construction and exterior projects don't always happen or can't always happen during certain parts of the year. So that explains some of the delay. on some of these projects. And you'll see that a total of 308,960 was devoted to that, and none of it has been drawn yet, but we'll go over that in a minute. Next slide, please. And this just kind of breaks down the groups that we funded. The ones in blue are the ones that were ultimately funded. Excuse me, the ones in gray were not funded. And you can see what was awarded and what's been drawn so far. So bar none, which is Dismas House, that's an organization that, usually has a modest ask. But the reality is it's also sort of almost like what I call a one and done. We haven't received their overall bill, which again is by one and done, I mean, usually they bill for the entirety of the grant in one fell swoop. So clearly they're still working on some of their outcomes and objectives. We know they're good for it. That just happens to be the pattern. Every subrecipient has a certain pattern of how they bill. And it's still acceptable within the contract parameters. Friendly House Youth Development was another one we funded. They're about 31% drawn. And again, there's some seasonality to this too, in terms of, there's different components within that youth development. There's basketball stuff that can be done during the winter. There's summer stuff. There's spring stuff. Different activities that kind of flow throughout the year. Worcester Community Action Council is the VITA program, which again, as a refresher, that's tied back to the earned income tax credit, and just helping people with their tax applications or tax, helping them prepare their tax returns. And so you could see that, or you could realize that this isn't done yet because we're just now in tax season. So without going through every single one of these, you can see, the ones that have drawn, the ones that's, Family Health Center is another one that typically doesn't bill us till towards the end of the year. I wouldn't really say I'm worried about any of them on here too much. But that's kind of an overview. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but this gives you a flavor of, what was awarded and where they're at in the process.
Mhm.
So,
And for any new members, the scores here, that would be the total cumulative score that CDAC members awarded last year, and then those averages from them as well. And so this is in descending order from the top scored service.
yeah, typically we have, as Lena mentioned, both a total and an average. And sometimes people will have to recuse themselves, and that's why we go with averages as well. Can you go to the next slide, please?
You guys, which one was the one that was new last year?
Go back to that. I'm sorry.
Wasn't it like 10,000 or something, or 9 something?
Yeah, so we had, I believe that was RISE, which is towards the bottom, you see? That's a patient navigation.
Mhm.
That's basically where they're kind of doing triage and sort of some low-level case management, like connecting people to state programs for health.
Okay.
And they do other things too, but that's probably the one you're referring to.
Where it was the
Okay.
$10,000 award that was capped at, which it looks like the awards that we gave maybe bar none, but I feel like bar none's received a bunch.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe it was the Safe Exit Initiative.
It was definitely one that was
that's a
capped.
Safe Exit Initiative, maybe. I think there may have been more than one, so that's probably another one as well.
Okay.
I think there were 3 new organizations, but only one of them was eligible for that award, which was SEI.
Mhm.
I got a little question. Sally's Place and Spoonfuls, they received higher scores than other organizations, but it looks like they weren't awarded funding. Was that just based off of what happened after us, or was it just they weren't eligible?
Yeah, so a combination of things. Even though obviously, as I said to everyone realizes your voice is very important. It's part of the community input. it's ultimately the city's decision as to how to allocate their resources, and particularly the city managers. So I can't remember the backstory to Sally's Place per se, but I seem to recall that we were helping Salvation Army through other funds, and that's definitely the case with
Makes sense.
Spoonfuls. They
Okay.
received quite a bit of funds through the ARPA program.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you could see the other ones had their issues. There were kind of lower scoring programs that had, you know, some concerns
You
on
know-
our behalf. And then also we can't always allocate everything because obviously we have a cap, right? So
Hmm.
What
Thank
was
you.
the story with Centro not taking the award, and what was done with that 17 after they declined it?
So Centro forewent their award because they were trying to focus primarily on their food pantry. They didn't, for whatever reason, programmatically, they didn't want to continue with the case management work. And then I believe we folded that into Friendly House. Yeah,
Okay.
because again, they have sort of like a scattered program where they were also taking on some of the work that Swinnick had done in the past at
Okay.
the site at Camp Street. So this is trying to help make them whole because there was years where they're operating in the red because of that. And there's a whole backstory to that too, where Friendly House had taken over different geographic spaces and functions that Swinnick had done because they were their fiscal agent for quite some time, but Swinnick was struggling with some staffing transitions that they had and some organizational transitions. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Can you go to the next one, please?
Mhm.
So this breaks down the facilities. As I mentioned, facilities take longer to launch. They're more involved. It's more administratively heavy on our part too. There's environmental reviews that we're beholden to doing. All kinds of things kind of baked into that, even for the smaller projects. And we're going to go into these a little bit more in detail in a little bit. But those are the three main ones that were the nonprofit-based facility projects. You see there.
Sorry, I'm just noticing that these were updated and I am not sharing the most recent
Oh, okay.
slide deck. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Um, okay. Sorry about that. This is the correct. Oh, sorry, Greg. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Was the prior one the one, Lena, was the prior one the one with the data points for interdepartmental that we're missing?
This is the correct slide deck, so it includes the data points for interdepartmental that were missing
Okay,
before.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So same thing with interdepartmental. Some of these take a while to get going, and there's different aspects to the projects that are challenging. The neighborhood development division, which would be my division, obviously asked for 275,000. That is basically multi-tiered financing towards the Green Island project, which is the Complete Streets project for Endicott and Bigelow, which we literally just got back from the law department today, the executed contract. Basically years in the making in terms of design process, community input, environmental reviews. So we're poised to execute on that hopefully very soon this spring. and start drawing not only in that 275,000, but like prior allocations and installments that we had requested from prior years as well. The Housing Development Division, obviously they get, actually kind of surprised by that number. And that is, I believe, what I had sent to you, right, Lena?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what you.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That they still haven't drawn a lot of those funds. But again, the issue with some of these department allocations is there's funds that are issued from the prior years that still need to be, first in, first out type thing, where they still need to be expended on projects that are currently in motion. I will say one of the challenges with the Housing Development Division is they have quite a bit of smaller projects through their elder rehab program, through their owner occupied and investor rehab program. And so anybody who's dealt with housing knows that those projects are difficult to kind of get up and running. But that is something I probably want to circle back with the Housing Development Division on. And they also work with inspectional services on demolition of spot, slum, and blight. And again, I'm surprised that nothing is kind of like moved yet on that. Business development, 35% drawn, and inspectional services for their systematic sweeps or systematic housing inspection. They just call it the sweeps. They're about halfway drawn, which is, again, if you're looking at it in terms of chronological time frame in the year, that's pretty much spot on. And then we have a few more exhibits here that kind of relate to somebody say something?
No.
Oh, okay. We have a few more exhibits here that relate to like the nonprofit facilities, I believe, that Lena put together, if you want to, yeah. Okay. So this is Centro Las Americas. As I mentioned before, there's environmental review. The environmental review could be simple, it could be complicated, depending on the nature of the project. In this case, the project, the VR was fairly straightforward. It's just more of an issue of the private funding that Centro needs to leverage towards it, and the fact that they weren't really in a rush to get the thing done right away, based on the timing of all the things that they're juggling. They have their estimates in, and they're hoping to move on that, I believe, is it like later this spring, right? Lena, I don't know if you have any
Yeah, I think they're anticipating April construction, probably towards the end of April, and it should be a really quick project, maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Edward and Kennedy, this is if you recall, this is the one where they were having issues with, this is the one near the Rotary off Lincoln Street. They're having issues based on the nature of, what they do there, and I guess even the fact that they have certain pharmaceuticals. They seem to be having a lot of vagrancy and criminal activity, I guess, maybe that's occurred over the years. So they wanted to create a fence, a perimeter, provide some more screening, some more safety. This took a while to kind of get up and running, back and forth with Edward and Kennedy on that. They have selected a contractor, and I've been told that this is, if it's not starting right now, it's going to be starting like in the next few weeks, because they can even work during the winter. So I'm not too worried about this one either. This one's a little more complicated. This is the Fatty Jenkins basketball court. This one will be a little bit more of a heavy lift, given the fact that there's a couple different sources going into this, including CPA funds. Have had multiple meetings with Lister Common Ground about this, trying to kind of launch it, get it up and going. They had a lot of design and some design changes, including the addition to, I believe they're now going to have almost like a gazebo-like roof structure to the project. But the environmental review is the big thing here. It's requiring a phase one given the site location. And this is something that, we're not, most of the environmental reviews are done in-house by us and our staff. But something at the level of phase one has to be done by a consultant. We just don't have that ability. And so we are putting some CDBG towards the initial soft costs of that, which are actually less than I thought they'd be. I want to say it's like 3,000, 3,000 or 5,000 that we're putting towards that. I thought it would be a more expensive phase one. But once we get that underway, we're hoping to, kind of roll the ball, no pun intended, from there into the next phases, which include construction, and then also working with Jackie and our staff to kind of coordinate the use of CPA funds combined with CDBG, which is be our first kind of foray into that. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works, because there's certain ways that CPA funds can and are intended to be used, and obviously the same thing for the CDBG funds. And I think that's it on the nonprofit facilities from 51. So that hopefully gives you a sense of like where everything is. I feel pretty confident about the facilities. Worcester Common Ground is one that we might struggle a little bit with, not because of Common Ground, but just the nature of the project. And like I said, the interdepartmental has their own challenges. I don't know if there's any questions, or that culminates, or that's the end of that like presentation that we put together on the project statuses.
I think it was very
I
informative.
appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's really great.
Hopefully you're all still awake.
Yes. And I think especially for someone like me, seeing an overview was really good because it helps me to understand the thinking as to how the money are located and who can get allocation. So that was good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things behind the scenes too in terms of like these projects. It's I've been doing this for several years now, and I found that there's always something. There's always something that kind of like both positive and negative that comes up. And so a large part of what we do is project management and not just grants administration, because we kind of have to be the quarterback, the leader to kind of like drive the projects, particularly sometimes when you're dealing with other departments, or even with quite frankly with some nonprofits, because they don't always have the capacity or don't outsource some of the capacity to kind of push the projects forward. But I would say in the last decade or so, we've had a few stragglers, some projects that have taken much longer than I had hoped, but nothing that ever got us in hot water with HUD in terms of it took too long. And actually, kind of on that theme, the National Community Development Association, which is a kind of a policy advocacy sort of organization for community development, one of their latest sort of interfaces with Congress was around maybe changing some of the CDBG parameters going forward. And I noticed that one of the things they were talking about was expanding the public facility window to make that more of like maybe, or I shouldn't say public facility, but the timeliness in general, the timeliness issue, which they test us on every year, expanding that more to like a 6-year window as opposed to doing a test every year. So that I think will play into the favor of supporting these bigger, more complex projects, and even the smaller ones that don't always get done right away. Even though they may be shovel ready, they're never really always shovel ready. So
Makes sense.
I think that was it on our presentation. I don't know if Izzy or Ismail, if you want to continue with the agenda.
Yeah, so we're now going to be covering the scoring rubrics and discussion around the evaluation process in terms of are there any changes we want to make. I know that at our last several meetings, we had discussions around the tools and whether they mirror the actual application or not, both for the nonprofit as well as the public facilities. So I did take a quick overview of what we had thought we had discussed. And I do recall that I think it may have been brought up initially by Nicole at one point, and maybe even Jenny. So I can start the conversation by, providing some of like the feedback from my perspective. And then if people want to provide some insight around those and whether I'm on track or not, that would be helpful. How's that?
That sounds great.
Right. So originally I went through the first application scoring sheet. And what I come to realize is that the flow of the scoring sheet doesn't always add to the actual number of the question being asked. So if we go into like number 2, it says proposal addresses community needs identified in the 5-year. I'm assuming that's the work plan. If we can make that small change there. And then I think we're looking at question 2 versus question 12. Am I correct there or no?
So you're talking about number 2 here on the what's on the screen, proposal addresses a community identified in the 5-year comp plan?
Yeah, so if we look at this one right on number 2, I'm assuming that we're looking at question 2, not 12.
You're looking
To
at
evaluate,
you're looking at
evaluate that.
so the way
notes
this
column here.
the way this should have worked, and I don't know, we might need to update the reference points, but
Yeah.
this column that says public service RFP content that's referring back to the question 12 in the
Right.
RFP. So
Okay, so we want to
So-
look at that because they don't necessarily match.
So what I think the issue is with these scoring sheets, because these are for both facilities and the, right? Okay. So for the facilities, there is no question 12. There's 4 questions. I was trying to figure out like
Right.
what the issue I had last year was. So there's stuff that wasn't relevant. If you're looking at the facilities.
So what
Well,
I did was,
and
Nicole, was I actually came up with a different scoring tool for the facilities. And what I was trying to address was really more like the questions around the first nonprofit section based on this tool that we have in front of us.
So I think, first of all, I welcome any input on this to make it better, because again, this was developed to help you guys do your job better. And if it's not doing that, then definitely we can come up with something else. I think my thinking on this column was really that this was more about the public service RFP content, because it was a lot more, there's more meat on the bones there. But like in terms of the facility, it's more streamlined. There's not as many questions. But as it says, it's relevant public service RFP content, with the thought process being that you would kind of have to like look at the facility one on your own, and figure out where the same relevant content is kind of brought up. But we can definitely create 2 different instruments, and have something that has a similar column with reference to the facility content as well. And you say you actually did that, Ismail?
Yeah,
You
I
came
did
up
that
with
for the facility one, but even if I look at the nonprofit proposals right now, right?
Yeah.
I cross reference community needs, right, in the proposal, which is really addressing question number 2.
Okay, so there's 2 ways to look at community need there, and this one is, and I don't have I don't know, Lena, I don't know if you have the RFP that you can bring up, but I don't have it in front of me. But
I have it in front of me. That's what I was looking at too.
okay, so what is question 12 currently right now?
It does talk about the 5-year con plan.
Yeah.
Question 12. And I remember last year needing to ask for the 5-year con plan, and there's like a big chunk in the middle of it that goes number by number by number. So I'm looking at, I don't know why I'm looking at application 21. Nope, that's not good. Application 1, I think, just mentions it. It's a big list of just things, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with what we discussed last week, which was the survey. This is a separate thing, and I do remember needing to look at the separate 5-year con plan. So I
Okay,
know
so
I know what you're referencing.
yeah, so this is definitely clearly about the comp plan, which we do need to take into consideration. And unfortunately, the comp plan is what it is. I mean, I wish it was formatted differently or kind of presented differently, but it's a template that HUD provides. So you kind of have to wade through that section, even though it kind of goes on and there is quite a bit of community needs, because there's no shortage of needs, right?
Right, right.
But in terms of the 8 newly prioritized community need, I think if I'm not mistaken, we had one in here, or if there wasn't one, we need to add one that ties back to community need meetings and the results of those, which would be, in this case, the most latest iteration of that would probably be our survey that you're referencing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But based on what it just take another look at those questions, I kind of understand the Ismail point. Maybe the question 2 should be 2 and 12, because 2 really articulate the needs. How do your proposal can address their needs? 12 just a reference in the community plan where it is. I think those 2 need to be combined to really highlight the proposal.
So if I'm looking at the proposals, the proposal highlights program needs and demonstration of need, right? On question number 2.
Yes,
So
I think that's a very important question to answer. And that's kind of lead the whole proposal. What do you try to propose? Then the 12 basic is a reference. The question is a reference you ask and the organization, and where, which point you try to address in the community,
right.
plan. I think those are 2 relevant. They should combine. That will make sense to me. But
Right.
I'm new, so I kind of rely on your input.
Well, it is 2 different forms of community need. Like in terms of 2 sort of like wells that you're dipping into to, and one of them is clearly the comp plan. And we can't kind of dismiss that because it's a HUD requirement.
Okay.
But the other one, like I said, usually comes from the data points that we collect around community need meetings, which we have maybe we used to have them once a year, but it's at one point it's like the community needed the heck out of the community. Between ARPA and CDBG, it's like there's only so many things you're going to keep, coming up with. But the latest iteration of that, in my mind, would be the survey. And I'm thinking that, if memory serves me right, that's what 8 was supposed to be about, but not necessarily this survey, but like prior needs. And it says see guide questions 2, 4, and 7. So I don't know if you have the guide that you can bring up too, Lena.
I think the other part of this too is, if looking at number 2, that the proposal addresses a community need that's identified, it's yes, it does. That's pretty clear whether it does or not. And then it doesn't really seem to give us an opportunity to score what they're talking about in question 2 of the demonstrated need and program need overall. Who's it serving? What's the number of people and all of that? And then obviously we're looking at the whole entire proposal, but the only time it really talks through looking at the whole proposal is question 1. So I feel like we are missing, really making sure that we're giving folks credit for how they are walking through that need Obviously if it's a need that's listed in the plan and it's new, those are two different things versus the quality of the answer to number 2.
Yeah, so
'Cause we're not pushing to have people really look at number 2. All of us look at number 2 except for those 2 questions.
well, people, I believe there is a question in there. People should be addressing how it relates to the needs in the comp plan. And actually, let me take a look at some of the current applications. Give me a second.
Yes, that's question 12, but question 2 that's more specific to their project isn't really pointed to in any of those assessment questions.
So as I look at question 2, it's for services, it's program need, demonstration of need.
Yes. I'm just saying that there is no look at question 2 in any of those scoring questions.
Yeah.
The rows.
So we can certainly add something, but I wouldn't look, and I'm not exactly sure what Ping was referring to earlier, but I wouldn't combine what here is 2 and 8 into 1. I think they need to be separate, and then we can certainly capture the essence of question 2 a little better.
So how about we added number 1? Is that possible? Because based on because I have fresh eyes and what I see, I understand, Greg, your point, because this comp plan need to be reference identified is important. So because 5-year plan, the area is big topic, homeless, low income, and it's a bigger area. If any organization that propose, it's really narrow down focus. They want to do the food pantry. They want to do the free and, dental service. So those are very narrow down to support a big plan. I think I agree. We need to have a line, say clear proposal to address the number 1, number 2, especially number 2 question. So I don't know how to, maybe we can reword number 1, proposal narrative. Maybe if I don't know, because I'm just from what I see, if we don't want to add another question, we should give credit for people can narrow down, figure out the service to support this big plan.
Would it be easier to, under number 8, this newly prioritized community leave, we're already rating questions 4 and 7, so we can make that a question 2 only, and then maybe up the weight on the score? I did feel kind of sad only giving it 0, 1, or 2 points last year, especially if it's the priority of the city. I understand not wanting to touch the scoring criteria number 2 because I feel like we need to keep the federal thing separate and have that clearly measurable to HUD. But the scoring criteria under number 8, I wouldn't mind being able to give more weight to it and focused on question 2, because questions 4 and 7 are referenced under scoring criteria number 3, if we're following along to all my numbers.
Okay, so yeah, there's a bunch of different input. I'm trying to sort of triangulate it all, but I think as I'm looking at the RFP now, and again, this may be an artifact of the past, and we did tweak the RFP along the way, so I don't know if we kind of lost the reference points, but first of all, let's put the question, when I say question 2, I mean in the RFP. When you look on the far left, all these things, 1 through 8, clearly those do not refer to 1 through 8 in the RFP, just so we're all on the same page on that.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So I am hearing a lot about people wanting to do more with program need / demonstration of need, which is currently question 2 in the RFP. Now, I do have to say that that is kind of a subjective thing. It's not like, when they're answering that question is the way I look at it. It's not sort of like, hey, look at the comp plan, or hey, look at the survey for the applicant. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't have a problem with that. I'm not doing a value judgment on that. I'm just saying that this is sort of a generic stab and at their point, or from their point of what a community need that they're addressing is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, what I think that's exactly what makes it challenging is when you're at least in the way I think about this is I'm thinking of targeting, let's say, a specific group of population because they may be at high risk of potential diseases, right? And so if we think about like Hep C, or we think about HIV, or even gonorrhea, chlamydia, certain populations are impacted more than others. So how do like it doesn't provide like data to help sort of conceptualize like here's what I'm gonna go for, here's why I'm doing it, here's the people who's impacted, here's the number of people that so to me like that sort of like need and demonstration of need is it may be subjective, but it really shouldn't be subjective because there should be some qualitative data that shows and demonstrates why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that that's part of my own confusion when I read, let's say, proposal addressing community needs identified in the 5-year comp plan. Now I understand that, so I can move from that piece. But then there's the piece of like, how do we justify, or how do we know that they clearly articulated why they want this and how they're going to utilize it?
Yeah.
So do you score it to 1 to 5, 1 to 9? Like I don't like, to me that's where like I get confused. Go ahead.
So I'm hearing a lot about question 2, and I don't mind kind of handling that question 2 in the RFP, and I don't mind handling that a little differently. I'm looking at how it references 2, 4, and 7, and I'm even a little confused by that because 4 is about program specific impact and experience.
That's right. That was my next
7,
question.
so again, that may be an artifact of the
Yes.
may be an artifact of the fact that we changed the RFP
Maybe
at some point
yeah.
and the numbers switched around or something.
Yeah.
But
Because to me it addresses, I can find number 7 under there, but I can't see
Right.
number 4 reflecting that. So
Yeah.
that was one thing. The same thing with number 4, project readiness. I can see 11 discussing project readiness, but I don't see anything on number 8 that discusses that.
okay.
So the way I have it in my head, I have number 1, all narrative content, that's fine. Number 2 reflects, I thought it was reflecting question number 2, but we realized that now it's actually like the 5-year con plan. Then number 3, I have it as number 7, question number 7. Number 4, I have it as question number 11. And then number 5, I have it as 1, 3, and 4. 6 seems to follow the 5 in the program budget. Actually, does it? I don't know if I think it did, yeah. And then number 7, discretionary committee points. Obviously, that's clear. And number 8, then obviously we
4
need
and
to see the
7.
guide.
So
Okay.
did you went through the most recent RFP and checked those questions, Ismail?
Actually,
Sorry.
I did not. I basically went through the proposal.
From last year?
No, from this year. Yes, I went through the proposal
Okay,
this year
okay.
and matched
Great.
it with the response with this sheet. Yes, just correct.
I think that's great. If it makes more sense, I think my feedback on the question 2 is proposal addresses a community need. I feel like that's a yes or no, and a 9 is a lot of points to give them. So I feel like if there's a way to have lower points for that yes, they are doing that, and then and maybe it's so it's 12 and 2. If there's a way to just change the narrative on like the criteria for number 2, that it's addresses it according to the 5-year con plan, and what's the quality of how they're addressing it, or something that adds up to 9 points, or we add something that has to do with question 2. Because
So
I feel like 9 points for whether
Yeah.
someone's addressing, up to 9 points for whether someone is addressing a need or not. It just doesn't feel like a lot. It does a lot of weight for like basically a yes or no question.
So I do feel like, and maybe this is what was being referenced much earlier by Ping, and I apologize if I misunderstood. But I think if I'm hearing what was just said correctly by Jamie, that I think question 2 could have a reference to question 12, or not question 2, but excuse me, the second thing that we're measuring could have a reference to both 12 and 2.
I think
That's
it
part-
could too. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And-
exactly what
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that Jamie
I
was
think we
saying,
could
and
work
also
with
what
that.
Pin was saying.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, okay, so let's break this down. So, because this could, I value everyone's opinion and stuff, but this could also like take forever with different viewpoints on different pieces out of order. But let's just take it by order. So proposal. So are people comfortable with the first one, the way it reads and what it's referring to?
Yes.
Okay. So for this second one, proposal addresses a community identified in 5-year comp plan. We can expand that to be proposal addresses a community need as explained by the applicant or something like that, as what and or identified in the 5-year plan. And then have you guys refer to both question 2 and 12. And do we want to keep that at 9?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm comfortable with leaving at 9, but I would like to hear other people.
I think if you're considering both questions 2 and 12, you could keep it at 9. And then I don't want to get ahead of myself, but then I don't necessarily see the need then for scoring criteria number 8. So that could streamline the scoring sheet more.
I'm sorry, you don't see that. It seemed like you cut out there for a minute. You don't see the need for what?
Criteria number 8.
Number.
Okay.
The little bonus points. I think giving more weight to question 2 by putting it in with the federal need up in criteria 2, then gets rid of the need for those little bonus points on criteria number 8.
So
Well-
should we increase the weight of 2?
No, so I think that's why I almost feel like either we need 3 things that are addressing community needs or 2 of them need to be combined. I almost feel like the federal one needs to stand alone.
Right.
Yes,
That-
I think that is probably a really good idea. I just don't know if it should be weighted that heavy. If it
And-
is
and the
basically
reason-
just saying whether they're doing it or not.
Well, first of all, it's kind of playing in the favor of subrecipients to some extent, right? Because there's a lot of community needs and almost everybody's identifying one of them, but occasionally you'll get something that they're not, that's not on the the radar or the map of the 5-year plan. But the reason for the newly prioritized community needs is because I'll give you an example, for instance. Let's say in 2013, when I first started, if I went out and I talked to the community about community needs, you know what one of the top ones was going to be? Foreclosures.
Mm,
Because we're looking at the Great Recession outfall, right? We're still digging out of that. If I fast forward 9 years from that or whatever, and I say, hey, what's the top community need? Or even now, it's going to be things like housing, homelessness, and mental illness. So that's the reason for 8. It's that 8 is more like real time. Things are changing. Like a 5-year plan is done every 5 years, but even in a 5-year cycle, when you go out and touch base with the community, there may be things that weren't on the 5-year plan radar screen that are now more of a priority. And that's
and
why.
where would applicants know what are those newer, most real-time things to even try to be scored differently?
Well, it usually has, we usually have some sort of exhibit or something that we utilize. In this case, we could do the survey, for instance. In the past, it was like the results of the ARPA outreach, those kind of things. So let me see what does the guide say now, because I know the guide probably needs to be updated too, but let's see.
Yeah, I think any way that we can have our scoring match the guide and the questions is great. I don't know how fair it is if, it wasn't clear that we have a survey we did a year ago and it's,
Okay, so like if you look at number 2, the program's main intent, or not number 2, but 2 points under the guide, community needs bonus points.
Mhm.
The maximum points would go to things whose purpose is to assist or directly provide assistance with preparation of mental health support, substance disorder, or childcare.
Job preparation or training.
What's that? Yeah, job.
Also-
I skipped that one, but you can see those are things that, and this probably is rooted in the community survey. Now I think about it, because I
Yes,
think
it
those
is.
were, yeah. So those are the top things. So does that make sense? Whereas if I went back and if I was in a 5-year cycle and I went back to year 1 of the comp plan, that may not be the top thing. But now it's
it
become
does
that.
make sense to keep 8 if that's as long as the applicants are aware of
Yeah,
what
so
those
that's
things
like
were.
that's like the icing on the cake, real time check-in, extra points. Like, oh, this is like the topic of the moment, and you're addressing it. Like, I'm not going to throw away a food pantry application because food pantry and food insecurity is clearly in the 5-year plan, has always been a community need, but it's not like the hottest topic right now. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of adding a few extra
Makes
weighted
sense.
points to those issues identified by the community survey.
You see, I would score number 2 a little lower and give number 8 a higher point because of that.
What do you mean by
Yeah.
number 2? We got to be clear with that number.
Criteria number 2,
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
like
okay.
less than 9 points for the federal and more than 2 points for the zoomed in version of what Worcester is looking for, which is what I was sort of pointing at earlier. And
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I have the that federal table. I found it and I can put it in our chat if you want to reference it for your scoring sheets later.
Yeah. So
And
So
Barry,
we can-
where are you seeing in the guide that those newer needs are listed for the applicant?
well, it says it right here. Like if you look on the left side, it's on the left side of my screen. I don't know I'm assuming it's the same on your side.
Yeah, I can
So
see
do
it.
the
I think
applicants?
I think
Yeah,
But the
Lena's highlighting
applicants
it right
don't
now.
get this.
I think, yeah, Jamie's
What they
pointing out to
have,
the
like
applicants.
what they have is a totally different, the scoring criteria that's with the application is different.
We do provide within the technical assistance materials this table that you have, the advisory committee scoring criteria. So they see it listed here, newly prioritized community need, and that receives 2 points.
Right, but not everybody goes to that. The sheet that's on the website that you download with the application doesn't have any of this. It just has like a 2-page, pretty general, like scoring guide. It's just not the same.
So I guess the question is, do the subrecipients see this content?
As of right
No.
now, no, not this guide.
That guide is for you guys to work
Right.
through the scoring system, not for
Yes.
them. They already have abbreviated 1-page guide that generically tells them the type of things that are looked at when they're scoring.
Right, but
And
those
but what
newly
Jamie-
priorities needs are not listed anywhere on there. I'm just saying they don't even know that they could get extra points for that. It's not on the scoring thing
but
that
that's
the
why
applicants are given.
I hear you, but that's why this thing was designed to not give you like 10 points for that, but actually just a couple. But does that make sense? Because otherwise we'd be having to change the RFP every year too to include to include that content. But we can look at it through a different way too. And that's the way this was calibrated. It wasn't intended to, have somebody who's doing, let's say in this case, a job training or mental support, just blow past the other applications because that's weighted so much higher. It's just more of like icing on the cake type thing. Nor do I want to steer applications around those things because those change too. But I guess for our sake, if we are going to tweak this, just going back to, if we can go one by one, because I know Lena's going to have to try to take notes on this.
Yeah, it would be great to,
So here's
even just take a pause and maybe read off the suggestions or the revisions I have so far rather, and maybe some of them go to a vote or need further discussion or I'm misinterpreting. So far I have, the first thing here is to revisit the questions themselves that are referenced here in this column and make any of the needed adjustments just so that it's correct. There was a separate scoring sheet potentially for public facilities, which references the set of questions for public facilities themselves. We had taking weight from question number 3, which references questions 4 and 7 in the RFP, taking some of those possible points and reallocating them to question 8 here for newly prioritized community needs, taking points away from criteria 2 and reallocating some of those points away towards number 8 for prioritized community needs, or incorporating a reference to question 2 from the RFP about generally meeting community needs to this criteria number 2. That's what I have so far. Am I missing something or misinterpreting something?
No, I think you captured it pretty well. I think go ahead,
Yeah.
Greg.
I was going to say, I think what makes sense is for us to just revisit this and to create a facility one as well, and then come back to you and present it, and then seek feedback from you all on that, rather than try to try to do this on the fly right now during this meeting. Have you react to something that's already been re-engineered based on some of the things that Lena has just said and that we've just talked about. Does that make sense? Are people open to that, I guess?
Totally fine for me.
I think
I
that would
am.
be great.
And I do hear you on the facility one too. I just always thought the facility was a lighter lift because there's less questions, but we can definitely, and I think my mentality originally too was I don't want to have death by forms, you have a form for every little type of application, but I could see how it would be easier, more calibrated to score with something that's just about facilities versus these services, even though a lot of the questions kind of overlap. Unfortunately, that will put us a little bit behind in terms of if people wanted to start scoring stuff right away, but it's not going to put us that far behind. But and rather than, I suppose we could email it out in advance, but I at this point I'd rather just unveil it at the next meeting, just to give us time to do it, and also so that I can explain, kind of walk folks through it as well. People
Yeah,
open
I
to
think it makes sense if you think over time it's been tweaked or changed, or just to make sure the questions line up. And you
Yeah.
know, again, I think about the applicant first and foremost, as far as making sure that whatever they have, what they're being told, how it's going to be scored is exactly how we're scoring it, obviously within reason of what we can do.
Yeah, and
And then we are
I'd have to go.
considering those really important questions,
Yeah,
like question 2.
I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure there's a 1-page or 2-page guide and there's also content in the technical assistance workshop.
Yes.
Where we excuse me, where we touch on some of these.
I did
These
just
eight-
post
these
the
eight
guide
content.
and the scoring criteria in the chat of what's at least available to be downloaded with the application on the city website.
Yeah. And I can send that link out to everyone, or you can just simply look it up. It's on the web. It's all out there, transparent on the web, our website. So.
But I'm really
All right.
glad that we're looking at this, and I think it's worth taking the time so we all feel good about the scoring and that it's, you know, it's all lined up. I think it's worth, especially if it hasn't been looked at, you know, at this level in a while. We're all new, and I think we all have a good perspective. I think it's worth taking that time and looking at it fresh. You know, the whole thing doesn't need to be redone. We're not saying that, obviously, but the little things I do think make a big difference, and it will make it easier for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the intent of it to begin with was to make people's lives easier when they were kind of evaluating, and also to put a structure to it too. I've sat on committees in the past where we're reviewing grants outside of City Hall and whatnot, and somebody will give something, you know, like a 0 or something, and it's just like, well, what was your rationale for that? Whereas this is a rubric that kind of like gets you thinking and kind of like further calibrating your thoughts about applications versus just kind of like the Wild West where people are giving things like a super high score or like I said, like nothing at all, you know. So this kind of keeps creates a bandwidth that we kind of operate in and reference points and stuff. But yeah, it definitely needs to be revisited. Given the fact that I think I'm still kind of confused by the 4 and the 7 under number 8, newly prioritized community needs. I don't know why that was lumped in there. Maybe there was a rationale for that, but as I look at it now, it may have been an artifact to prior RFP version. So
Yeah, 4 and 8.
So definitely we can-
Sure, I think anything that we have, the applicants should have, so they understand. I mean, I just think that if we're gonna go through this to straighten this out, I do think that it may make sense to give them some, you know, any of the materials. If they're gonna get it in technical assistance, maybe that should just be something they can upload. So like the kind
well,
of the general simplified scoring criteria and guide, there's no reason why you couldn't, you know, possibly make the whatever other documents that are made available if they do show up for the technical assistance, just cuts. I know not everybody goes at this point, you know.
well,
Those
that's
slides are available as well online. I mean, any of the technical assistance information is posted, and that includes the rubric as well.
Yeah, I think if someone has done this application a bunch, they're just going looking for the applications, that stuff is separate on like meeting minutes and recording and all the files that go along with the meeting, not in the application. The CDBG application is just like 3 documents or whatever, you know, it's not all of that as far as what I've seen. No, I think
Yeah,
this is good. I think it's good to just look at it fresh.
the purpose of the guide, and when I say the guide is not your guide that we're talking about today, there's a more generic guide for the applicants, which I think you said you may have sent out. That is to kind of like give people a flavor of sort of the things that are important, but really ultimately be more of an administrative decision on our part as to whether or not to include something that finite for them. My thinking on that is I don't want to do that because, again, I'm not trying to set up a situation where people are, I'm not saying they would necessarily operate this way, but they're just trying to drill down to the level of like, how do I get 3 points out of this question? You know, I want to see an authentic application and not have somebody react to a scoring instrument other than just generically at maybe like a 5,000 foot level. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think the only thing even bringing up the scoring is that, you know, if we have things like, you know, giving people 2 extra points for new initiatives, and that's not even mentioned in the application or the guide or the scoring, the simple one that they get in the overview, you know, I don't know how fair it is to do it, you know, to even
yeah,
look at
and
it.
we could definitely think about that more. But then again, like I said, that's a very organic thing that sometimes happens twice a year, sometimes it happens once a year, sometimes it doesn't happen for 3 years. So we'd have to be revisiting the whole RFP every year to update it for that.
Right.
But I definitely hear you on that. Okay, we will rework these and bring them back to you. Was there another big thing? I know we talked about splitting the 2 and then recalibrating some of these things. and revisiting some of the reference points, like in terms of the question numbers and stuff.
Yeah, I think if we look at the public facilities, right, in the flow, I would just add, like the number one is that you currently have it. 2, proposal addresses community needs. That's number 2 and 3, question 2 and 3. Number 3 is outcome measurements. It doesn't really address that. It is actually on attachment A. If we're going to address that, we'll have to look at attachment A. Number 4, project readiness and reasonable and sound is number 4. Number 5, organizational have strong experience is question number 1. Number 6, proposed budget leveraging leverages funds is number 3, and then 7 remains the same and 8 remains the same.
Do you have all that, Ismail? That the different rubric for them? Can you send
Greg,
it?
we didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute again. I'm trying to mute myself out because there's like a cleaning staff that were just coming by earlier, and there was like a loud vacuum sound and whatnot. But I was just saying something in response to Ismail in terms of that was a lot that he threw out, and I would prefer to react to a visual of what. But by the same token, the way I look at it is there's only 4 questions in the as far as I can tell, like 4 actual narrative type questions on the facility application.
Right. But then, I was just basically going, if we were going to use the same tool, right,
Yeah.
and the way it was intended, that's why I think it's important to review it. I only basically reorganized it based on the current tool that you have and reclassify the areas in which people can look through them. So basically, if we look at number
even
1,
that's super helpful. That in itself is super helpful.
What's that?
Having the right questions, I think, is super helpful rather than using the same tool. Just the reference questions would are different.
I think we should have a separate. Again, it creates another form, but I'm thinking a separate one for the facilities because they're just different types of animals or whatever.
Yes.
And the questions are different. And then if you were looking at number 3, it really doesn't have anywhere where it talks about outcomes and measures. However, there is a logic model that does talk about outcomes and measures on attachment A. Was that required of them or not? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So if you look at, let's say, outcomes and measurements, which is question number 3.
For the public service?
Yes, it's not necessarily, it's under the public facilities. It's not necessarily addressed within the questions, but they do have an attachment that references the, and I don't know why they did that on that, but it was attachment A that talks about, and it's interesting because even then they do have objectives and activities and measures criteria. So do you want to use question 3 to review attachment A, or we just don't do that at all? I do think, just out of respect for everyone's time, I do think that spending the time on this now is better. So when we do the proposal, we can just go ahead and get those banging rather than having this conversation later again.
Agreed.
I agree.
But
it's better to iron out the kinks now. Yeah.
Yes. Because we don't want to get stuck with this in the middle of scoring. That's just not.
Yeah.
We absolutely should. So we're all on the same page. We want to know that the scoring is fair.
I know, like Ismail take the lead. Thank you.
I still have a question for the item 8 for the public service, because you're going to work on. I better ask you a question now. Because you said newly prioritize, whatever the goal, whatever. So what do you, I try to understand what you said, Greg. Is it something like a newly identified needs from a
So,
community? For
so,
example, COVID
so
happened.
maybe we take a couple steps back
Yeah,
and explain to you our process.
yes.
So maybe that's where there's a knowledge gap in terms of like understanding how we interface with the community.
Yes.
So we have to submit to HUD a 5-year consolidated plan. That explains it's much more nuanced and complex than this. It's the size of a New York City telephone book. So, but I'll just give you the elevator speech. It's basically kind of explaining how we intend to use the federal funds that we'll be receiving over the next 5 years. In a nutshell, there's a lot more to that, right? But then we also have to provide an annual action plan, which is what you guys help us with every year. That's what this is doing. You're kind of prioritizing how to spend a portion, because you guys are only seeing a portion of the funds, right? For CDBG annual or entitlement funds, I should say. So there's a 5-year plan, and then there's a annual plan. And typically, we would touch base with the community every year through some sort of community needs assessment. And like I said before, there's a pretty robust list of needs in the 5-year plan. And they're, again, if I had to speculate, they're always going to kind of be the same sort of needs to some extent. And we wanted to go broader, more so than narrow on the 5-year plan, because that opens up our opportunities for different projects. Plus they are actual community needs, right? We're not just making things up. But then for the annual plan, we'll do like a community needs assessment, which is literally sort of like a meeting where we invite people and we ask them structured questions and stuff like that. And then that kind of helps inform any sort of tweaks or more timely sort of needs that may be coming up. So that's what I meant by that. Like, so, maybe something that was identified in the 5 years starts to come up a little bit more over the years, or maybe it kind of falls into the background, but it's still sort of something identified by the 5-year. But the annual action plan community needs update kind of brings that a little bit more up to speed. But we're not required to do that. And at some point I stopped doing it every year because, like I said, you can only do so much of that. It's like, you can only survey or ask people things, so many times, particularly coming out of the ARPA project or the ARPA experience, which is, $149 million that we allocated to the community and to different city purposes. We had a ton of community meetings for that. And I felt coming out of that, I don't want to just like keep having these community needs meetings or asking people what their needs are when we kind of pretty much know what they are. So I don't know if that helps you understand a little bit more of like what we have to do and what we have to submit to HUD. And so you guys are part of the community input process through this committee. And you are looking at things through the lens of obviously your own opinions and your own values or whatever that you're bringing to the committee, but you're also having to refer back to the 5-year plan, which is what that comm plan references, that federal question, as well as any sort of things that we gleaned as staff about community needs, whether it's through those community need meetings or whatever. I hopefully that makes sense. But that's kind of gives you some of the background of how this works.
It's very helpful. I understand the whole background. My question is why item 8? I kind of agree with Jamie. Like why 2 point? Is it 2 point or 3 point? And
2 points.
when you say newly identify a priority is something current, we know. Why only carry such if this priority as important as number 2, question 2, people identify 5-year priority, they should carry same weight, right? Or no? That part I don't understand why weight is so low, not as heavy as the
I
other
think
one.
it's, at least from my perspective,
Mm,
from what Jamie is saying, the applicants don't see the scoring sheet and the criteria.
yeah.
So we can't give it a ton of weight. But if you
Oh.
look at what we were funding last year, some of the scores were very close together. And those 2 discretionary points can nudge them in either direct, like, so it would prioritize an organization that has a need that Worcester residents are seeking out, but it doesn't put them like leaps and bounds ahead of another application, but it can at least help differentiate. So at least discussing the scoring sheets has at least let me understand the weight, like why we gave these things weight. And now I'm much more on board with the I keep forgetting the category name, but the public services category scoring
Yeah.
sheet than I was before.
I think I'm getting close to understand, but one piece I still puzzle is question 2, item 2, 5-year plan, and the number 8. Are they same priority or different priority?
Different.
They're not, because it's during the 5-year plan, the city discovers, oh, maybe, this is the idea of what we had, but actually it's leaning towards something else. And so for every year, if other organizations or nonprofits.
So it's a new priority. Is that?
In a way, yes, but it's things that's highlighted along the way. And I feel like number 2, the reason why it has to have that high amount of plan, let's look at this from an economic perspective. It's the federal government that's giving us the money. So if they're saying this is their plan, we have to give it high priority. And then everything else is kind of like, okay, yeah, this one is what we're discovering. Maybe even for the city of Worcester, when they're nudging the federal government, 5 years later, they could say, we want more money. And I know you want to give us money for this. But in our city, we've also noticed along the way that we do need additional funds for this, and this. So
that's what the number 8 mean. I just want to understand the completely.
That's how they collect the data.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when you collect data, you can do a lot of things with data. So yeah.
So I'd have to say that Nicole's assessment was a little bit more spot on.
Yeah.
Toyin, what you just said is not necessarily inaccurate, but I guess just think of it this way, like, and I'm trying to think of an analogy, and I'm not going to come up with a good one, but the bottom line is, if you're going to go out and figure out what community needs are, like somebody said, hey, what are your needs in your life? You're not going to mention just one thing, right? Like if somebody could grant you those things, you're going to mention like 25 things, right? Or not everyone, but like, again, I can't think of a good example. Now, those things that you said 5 years ago, maybe a few of those have kind of like come more to the forefront. Like, so that's what
I think I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everybody, good job. I got it.
Yeah.
Took me a while. I just said, why need this newly? Okay. I think I got a complete understanding. I like, we get this right because we need to be able to articulate, score everybody. So we need to have a fully understanding. Got it. Thank you.
So I'm definitely not trying to kick the can down the road. I had heard earlier that we want to hammer this out now, and we will. But I think you need to react to the thing that's redesigned, and that's what I meant by the next meeting. We're not gonna do that in this meeting because I got to start digging a little deeper and looking at some things that are kind of in there. So is everybody amenable to that? And we're really not losing much time because the reality is, I'm only being partially sarcastic, but a lot of people don't even do their scores until the last couple of weeks before the process is over. Although I know some of you guys want to start tackling it like right now, even though we haven't even discussed any of the applications. But I think if we have something revised by next week, that would be good. If you want to kind of like go over the facility one, the way we just did the services, I'm certainly open to that. And I don't know if you have an exhibit, Ismail, or it's difficult when you're kind of just like throwing things out verbally for me to like go
I
back
agree.
and try to reconstruct that. You know what I'm saying?
So what
Like
I
really
did,
quickly.
Greg,
Yeah.
actually sent it in the text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I kind of like just gave you a quick snapshot for you and Lena about like what I had observed, and you guys can take it and move it forward for the next meeting. But
Yeah.
I think it makes more sense to come up with something that's different that aligns with the public facilities proposal.
But was I also hearing for a moment there that you were talking about maybe like having a, let's say for instance, another column where you're referring to like the same form, but another column? Bottom line is I think we should have a totally separate facility one. And I think everybody kind of agrees with that. So we'll take a look at this that you sent and put our own thought into it as well, and then come up with something for the next meeting.
Mhm.
Would you please provide a guide too for your new item scoring?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll come up with a
Yeah.
guide. It's going to
Okay.
be a lot more streamlined, like I said, more than likely. There's only 4 questions, but we'll come up with a guide.
Good.
But I think as much as we can honor what the applicants are receiving and what we're saying we're doing for scoring is the most important thing. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, and again, I don't disagree with you, and that's really more of an administrative decision that we'll have to make internally. But I do, again, my thought process on that is like, I definitely want people to know what we're looking at and what counts. But I don't, and maybe I misheard you, but I don't know that they need to see our scoring rubric down to like
And that's
3
okay
points.
too.
Yeah.
But I think like, if I was going for funding and I was gonna ask for 20 grand from CDBG and 20 grand from, Fletcher or somebody, that if I knew that there may be, a particular interest in new, more current, innovative, high priority needs for today, for this year, for next year, I'd send this over here and send, the basic stuff over there, so I just think it's a matter of like, we're not even saying that, you know what I mean? And that's not really scored very high. There's only 2 points or whatever, but still, like I said, to give up to 9 for is this a need that's in the 5-year plan? That's a lot of points for what I see as yes or no, because it's not really asking for the quality of that need. If anything, I think we could even just change that number 2 on the form to somehow just reward it like, does it meet something in the 5-year plan, and like, what's your assessment of whatever they're saying that they're going to be doing,
And
whatever
and
thing that
one
they're addressing, and
so-
that's question 2 and question 12.
And I think one way to avoid kind of having to change the bones of the RFP every year to adjust for that is to maybe that guide that I was referring to earlier, maybe that could have that content in it. And I'm pretty sure at one point I thought in the preamble narrative, because you guys are just seeing the questions, but if you look online in the RFP, I thought in the past, maybe we had kind of gone away from that, but we were putting some of those higher priority needs in there, because that's kind of how you like generically we're saying, hey, we want RFPs for public services or facilities, but let's say, we want, I'm just making this up, but like maybe the facility application can say we particularly want facilities that, address ADA requirements or something like that. Same thing with services. We're particularly interested in, but I also don't want people like engineering these grant applications to try to address that. Like, what I'm saying? Like if you're doing that already and you do it well, that's the kind of stuff I want to see more so than somebody
of
kind of like
course.
just reacting to like, oh, this is the topic of the month, so I'm going to build an application around that. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
But I
Yes, of
definitely hear you.
course.
So
Okay, so what I hear so far is that we have a consensus, and you guys can decide whether we should move on or not. But we have a consensus that Greg, you're gonna and Lena are gonna take these tools. They're going to be revised to meet both the nonprofit sector applications as well as the public facilities, and the independent one doesn't require any changes as based on my review. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right. So it is 7:35. I'm happy we can start probably doing one or two proposals if people would like to do that, just to get us sort of acclimated, and perhaps maybe reviewing one or two might give us a better sense of what the flow would look like and how to score them. Or if people have any questions, we can address them now before they really get into it. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Yes.
So we have the first one to be reviewed, and that is the African Community Education Program asset. And currently there's a cover sheet that I think Lena and their team was nice enough to put together for us to have sort of like a quick snapshot of what those proposals are, what the description of the project of the proposal, the need of the project, the anticipated total of people that need to be that are going to be served through this application, as well as the percentage of funds and what percentage of CBG funds will be utilized. So I think that we can begin by providing some feedback in terms of what people thought about around that proposal, or do people need us to review the one pager? Have everyone has a chance to review them already?
Yes.
Toyin and Pings? Yes, okay, perfect. So why don't we start then with the beginning of the proposal on question 1, overview of the organization and program services offered. Overall, did everyone feel like that was a strong application? Are there any weaknesses, strengths that people would like to highlight?
If we're going like 30,000 foot view, I really like it's one of the only if not the only application that differentiated between outputs and outcomes, which I don't know why I like that so much. But the output is very much like 45 students are going to spend 45 minutes a day on homework and academic learning and studying. But the outcome is, it's a little bit more nebulous. I think they could have even put graduation rate in the outcomes.
Mhm.
The only thing, it's so nitpicky on my end, but when they talk about the program impact and experience, this is question number 4 of the application. One of the last paragraphs said, in FY27, we're going to serve 130 students, including a cohort of CDBG supported 45 students. But they're budgeting for 37 students with the funding. That's the only thing that I saw that I was like, well, it doesn't quite add up. The application is funding for 37 students. It doesn't quite match the narrative of 45 students, but I'm not gonna knock them on a typo.
And it's interesting, Nicole, because I think we had that same conversation last year.
They got to stop copying and pasting that.
Because I recall that was the first thing I picked up when I first saw that.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. And I think we talked about we need to take that into consideration, that's not a good thing. It also makes it feel like, oh, I'm just going to get this. I'm just going to look at the other one and update it and send it in. And I think our committee here wants to see something more than that.
Yeah, I think we went through that. It's also what I also saw was, again, I think this is where we will all have, I mean, some of it is going to be subjective and some of it is around like some of our own experiences. So when I look at, the reflection of the board of directors, it doesn't really talk about who the board of directors are, what their roles are, how do they play a role, but yet that's a specific question that's being asked. Do you want us to go through that critical review process, or do you want us to really just say to really focus on the most particular pieces, which to me would be the number of people served, the outcomes that they're thinking of, and whether they have enough funding to support that.
Well, what I like about this program is they provide a little bit of transportation, which for a lot of kids is necessary. And they also take in a lot of students from countries that generally don't get into programs.
Mm-hmm. Great point,
my-
Steve.
Yeah, but and they've been around for a while. They've grown every year and I agree that maybe they could be more specific on the students. But I think they've grown. I think they have a quality program, and they've even survived having to move and purchase their own property, which is unusual for a group like that. So I think they're doing okay.
Pings and Toying, any comments or feedback?
Go ahead.
I think, sorry, Ping, you can go.
No, you go.
I mean, I think I do agree, but I think also it's like when they're saying we're serving a total of 130 students and then narrowing it down, maybe they're doing an accumulation of when they've had different people, but that could be addressed maybe from last year and this year, maybe it's an accumulation of that. The other thing, they do amazing work. And also you have to keep in mind that this is also an organization that are L2 speakers. And so in reference to how they respond to grants and whatnot, should be put into consideration.
Absolutely. Thank you, Toyin, for that.
You're welcome.
Pings?
And I think I got into this a lot last year too. I gotta just look with this again, and maybe I'll have other feedback, but just looking at the budget and the narrative, some of it just doesn't seem to line up well. I think part of the narrative said like 73% of the coordinator or some leader, I forget which one, I don't have it in front of me. I do have it, it's just on the screen. 73% of it is being paid for by CDBG, which feels like a lot for one staff person as far as how they're allocating the other funding that's coming in, that it's, what happens with that and what's the plan. That's a lot for one staff person coming out of this. But then when you look at the budget, the city form, it just doesn't seem to break down in the same way. So I just got to look at that again. Again, I'm kind of looking at it kind of funky on the screen. I don't have the printout in front of me, but it just seems to be that there might be discussion. Maybe you guys can look at that, and if you see that, or I don't know if I'm seeing it right, but that was one of the things that just looked like, having 73%, and maybe again, I don't even know if I'm reading that right, but it seemed like a lot coming from one grant for one staff person. After school program coordinator will work 40 hours. CDBG portion
saw
of
that.
salary is 73% of the total. Seems like a lot.
The percentage is a lot, but the salary itself is just like $44,000. 73% of that's 32. So, I mean, that's.
Yeah, and I think, well,
I
my
wouldn't want
gosh,
that.
like,
I
I'd
wouldn't
like
want
to
that
see
salary.
people that get paid a lot more than that, but just feels
Yeah, I
like a
think-
lot of weight. So what is the plan? We don't give you the full amount. 73% of one person's role. That was one concern. And again, I'm just not sure if the other form matches up with that narrative. I have to look at it again.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles, and I think we had a conversation around this last year, is that when small programs, specifically nonprofit organizations, are doing a particular job, it's really difficult for them to be able to find other resources that really align with their values and the work they do in the community.
Mhm.
So, allocating, 73% or 75% or 45% of their salary doesn't tend to be unusual. It tends to be sort of like something that happens to help support like some of these nonprofit organizations that otherwise wouldn't have gotten support unless they went through the city of Worcester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they list a lot of other funders, though. They list a ton of other funders. So it's just curious how all that, how it breaks down. I'd like to see it be a little bit more diversified and have the weight be shared among their funders, especially when it comes to personnel.
Mm.
But everything else, I mean, they're great. Everything else looks fine. I agree with everybody else too.
Okay. Pings.
So I have overall is a good grant application. One thing is I agree with everybody. Outcome kind of, I did a quick math, and they're talking about 390 hours. They're asking for 70,000. So the average is almost 600 an hour. That seems like a cost ineffective. Maybe I did it wrong. I think they ask a lot for they're going to have a better performance. That's a lot if I read the number correctly. It's
It would be
how much service you offer an hour, almost $600 for one session for an
it,
hour
it
because it
would be
says
600. Sorry,
390
600 an
390
hour though,
hours.
spread over 37 students as well, plus
Right.
transportation.
Right.
70 as depending how do we count them. If they offer, I'm just divide by hours because basically that's we calculate the thing. Average $500 for an hour because a student they're not doing one-on-one, they do sessions. So again, that's just my quick math, but I can be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the cost per unit is higher, absolutely, for their services versus other services that are provided in the grant. I mean, I think that was clear on the first page, which was $1,935 per person. I can't remember what it was last year, but yeah.
Yeah, if with their money, I'm a kind of money person. With that, with that kind of money, you can really provide maybe individual service have a better outcome. Is that to me just too much for the cost too high?
Hmm. I think it's something that, Greg, you obviously have to decide that at your end with the finance and the
Yeah,
decision-making powers to, but I think the feedback that everyone has provided has been great.
And this is a good example of us all coming, the purpose for this meeting. We all bring our for initial observation stuff that other people may miss. We all have different expertise, which is why we're here. And then you can take that expertise
Mhm.
and utilize that for your scoring, whatever that perspective is, and then it does become a well-rounded process. So I think this is
Mhm.
a good example of we're all seeing different things.
Mhm. And also you guys can, when you begin to use the scoring tool, you can score that based on your interpretation and what you think it um, give it a value of the score that you feel that it's needed, and then justify it with the comment, which you are able to do in the Excel spreadsheet in the PDF files that will be sent, or that you should probably have already in place. All right. Any other are folks okay with moving on to the next proposal? Lena and Greg, are you guys okay with us moving?
I think we're fine, but by the same token, I think we had carved out, what is it, 6? Is that what's on the agenda?
Yes,
And
but I think
considering
we
we're,
won't be able to get it to 6. I think we can do probably another one, or we could stop today and then start next week.
yeah, no, we can do another one. I'm just saying that like we're gonna have to defer part of the agenda into next week because and I know we had a this is just it's your guys' committee, but I do feel like and there was a lot to tackle today, right, with the scoring rubric. But I think you might want to come up with just to keep you guys better sort of organized and expectations the same, maybe like a time limit going forward. Not limit, but like a goal, right? You know, because we started at 6, we're going on 2 hours now, which is fine. It's just more of like just to kind of like keep the flow going because there's a ton of these, right?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I
so
think one thing that might be helpful is that we share only things that are different from that's already not been presented.
I
So if
agree.
there are any, and that would move us, I think, along pretty quickly moving forward.
and also I probably would be the last person to say this, but I'll just throw this in there. Because I did come up with a scoring rubric and kind of look at this somewhat analytically. But to the point that was made earlier, these are people providing services in the community. And, you know, it takes time out of their, I'm not giving them a pass, but it does take time out of that process to develop this RFP every year. And generally, we wouldn't be supporting a lot of services if they weren't doing good work and delivering on their contract promises. So I guess, you know, the thing about, you know, they may have missed this here or done that. I mean, that's certainly like part of your role, but I think just kind of like keep in mind that, you know, you have different staffing capacities and different things with respect to actual written proposals and whatnot. I also know because I was on the other side, right? Like prior to this job, I worked in the county environment where the county was giving my nonprofit funding. But in that scenario, we only had to apply every few years. Now, I don't know what sort of special, because I wasn't on the administrative end, how they enabled that to work. But just, I guess all I'm putting out there is like, you know, look at it also through the lens of like, what have they done in the past? What are they proposing to do now? Do they do it well? That kind of stuff, more so than did they dot every I and cross every T on the application. So
That's why I suggested, Greg, that you can take the feedback and you could utilize it as you wish.
yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying, like, also from the perspective of the discussion and kind of keeping things a little more like the flow going and stuff. So
Yeah.
What time were we ending the meetings last year? Just a comment on you talking about us talking. Do we just do 6 to 8, or do we stop, or do we get through as much as we need to get through?
Well, I think you guys should agree to something that's probably reasonable. I mean, we've never
Yeah.
had a set standard. If you want to stay here another hour and discuss this, I'm fine with that too. But I just feel like to be respectful of everyone's time and to keep us on a pace that will get us through this monster book, I think we kind of like probably should keep, you know, like a time metric. And I don't know if that's like an hour, 15 minutes max, whatever, hour and a half, whatever you guys agree to. I know one year, this was several years back, but I want to say that they did commit to having stuff wrapped up in an hour. But again, that's up to you guys as a committee how you want to do it. I'm just saying that
I
would be
think once we get going, I think we do good. I think we can get through it even if we do an hour and a half, if we need it. You know, I don't know if we'll need it if we have the rubric straightened out and we feel like we have a better tool. I just think we'll have a better perspective overall.
Yeah.
Mhm. And we did go pretty quickly last time after we were on the roll. The other thing we can suggest too, Greg, if you want and everyone wants, I mean, I'm happy to do an extra day if that helps speed up the process. But, we can just play it by ear. I mean, right now it seems like if we are meeting every week, we should be through this pretty quickly.
I would keep it at a
I
week.
do need to get off soon, so I don't know if we want to decide what we want to do now for tonight, and then definitely figure out what we want to do for the next meeting too.
Right. So, why don't we then decide, do we do an hour meeting or 2 hour meeting next time so we can get through more? How do people
say we
feel about
just-
that?
Meetings, we get done what we get done, but there's a hard out at 8.
Okay.
So if we're reviewing 10 applications and we get 10 applications
Yeah.
done by 7:15, that's great. But every week there should be a hard out at 8.
What did you say? Every week there should be a what?
Hard out at 8. 8 we stop. 8 p.m.
Okay.
I'm good with
Okay.
So
that.
basically 2 hours.
I'm
But
okay
if we
with
get
that.
done-
If everyone
if
else
we
is
get
okay
done
with that,
earlier-
I'm okay with that.
If we can get through it by 7, we should be able to get through it by 7. If not, we agreed to stay to 8.
Yes.
That's what
I
I
like
hear
that.
Nicole say. I don't think Nicole wants to do 2 hour meeting every
Yes.
time, is
No.
right?
Because if we say
Right.
8, we'll be here till 9.
Exactly.
I have no problem with that. That sounds fine.
All right. So are we all okay with that? I mean, do we all agree that we'll try to do as much as we can, and if we have to go through 8, we go through 8.
Sure.
Toyin,
to
is that
8.
good for you?
I'm like up to 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll do what we can and then up to 8. But yeah,
Okay.
or even an hour and a half. Yeah.
All right. That sounds good
I
too.
think we should not rush it through. And at the beginning, there's a learning curve. If we go through using new score sheet, when, we take our time. We don't need I don't think it need 2 hours, but if we have to, an hour and a half is a very good long time. I'm retired. I can stay 3 hours, but I want to
Yeah.
consider you guys because it's not necessary. If we prepare, we gotta go to, best time 45 minutes get a lot of things. We add another 45 minutes. It's now have, based on my experience, very sufficient. But if we have to, we have to. That's my opinion. But
So
you don't need to listen to my opinion.
no ping.
And
So
just
just
to know,
so you
what we're actually doing, so what you guys just saw that we're doing a brief overview of one of it, that's all we're doing. Do another one, and then during your own time, anytime at all, you can do all the scoring, go through
Right.
the application, do everything. And then, so it's just a matter of just doing like the overview. So I think the scoring and reading and considering the scoring, that is a slower, process than us just doing a quick overview questions. Because what also comes up too with some of these applications is we're all like, we have no idea about this section. Greg, can you go back to the organization and get clarity on this budget item or get clarity on what they're doing? And so it's really our opportunity to go over the application, send any other questions to these guys, and then we can go over it during our own time as well. So
Pings, we're not gonna be scoring the applications together. You're gonna
Right.
be doing that on your own time.
Yeah.
And we're just
I-
gonna go through these
Yeah.
proposals, and we're gonna give it the time that it's needed, but we also want to be mindful that we don't want to get stuck on a proposal for too long.
Got it.
All right. So we're gonna try to keep us, obviously, is it Joe? Am I correct?
Joel,
Joel. I mean, obviously he'll have to be reminded to keep us on check, or I can put a little on my side, say, okay, 15 minutes have gone by, let's move on, to help assist us
and if we
moving forward.
allocate a certain time period for each application and say, you know what, we have 10 to go through, we've got this amount of time, we've got minutes to approve and all this and that. I mean, it is what it is, but
Mhm.
Some of
I
them
think
we
it's
don't need
fair.
as
Actually,
much
why don't
time
we
as
do that?
others.
Right. Why
Speaking
don't
of
we do
keeping
the,
us on track
hey,
with
Jamie,
our
why
heart
don't
out
we,
at 8.
yes, we took
Yeah,
got 2 more
5.
minutes. So Jamie, why don't we say that we give it 5 to 10 minutes max for each proposal?
Yeah, we should.
How do people feel about that?
Yeah, I would say 10 minutes is enough to discuss a proposal.
All
And I
right.
think we did good. I think we all will do good. We'll do fine with it, once we get on our routine.
Do you want to review a few more applications before next week's meeting?
I would not, no.
Okay, keep it applications 2 to 6 for next meeting.
Like it, yep.
Yeah. So basically next week we should be able to do we should
I
be
do
able
have to
to
get off.
do
So
12. Does that seem reasonable for everyone to do up to 12?
Steve
And if we,
recommended we just keep what we have for next session.
So we
to only do 2 to 6?
so we're doing 6 to 10, or what are we doing?
well, if we're gonna do 10, if we're gonna do it 1 per 10 minute, right? And we're quickly gonna review the tool, which I think it should be a quick meeting next time. I don't think we're gonna be spending so much time as we did today. I think everyone seems to sort of like have a very clear sense of like where we're at today. We probably could do up to the 12 up to 12. With the one we just saw, like so getting us through Quinsigamond Community College. Quinsigamond Village Community Center,
Yeah,
Friendly House. Does that sound good?
I think
I
that's
can do that.
all
Yeah, let's try it.
focus, and we'll go for it. Yeah,
All right, perfect.
Yep.
All right, so we have our meeting for next week. Greg is gonna get the 2 scoring tools together. He's gonna send us those out ahead of time, so that way we don't have to spend a lot of time reviewing them. If we have any thoughts before the meeting, I think we should at least maybe email maybe before the due date, so that way we can be on track. What were you gonna say, Nicole?
Don't email each other. Open meeting law. We
Oh, that's
can't
right.
email.
Thank you.
You can
Thank you for
email
that.
Lena or Greg, or you can email maybe like Izzy or an
Yeah.
individual, but do not email the
That's
group.
right. Thank
But
you for that.
but
Yeah, go
just
ahead, Greg.
on that topic, that is a very important point. You're not supposed to be having deliberations outside of this meeting,
Right.
and unless it's something like, hey, what's the meeting time or something like that, we really shouldn't be entertaining emails from you all about stuff that's going on in the committee.
All right, then we'll wait till you send us the phone. We'll review them and then we'll discuss them at the day of the meeting.
Does
Wait.
someone wanna?
Anyone
what-
want to make a motion to end the meeting?
do we have a meeting?
Anyone want a second?
A second.
Everyone okay?
Okay, yep.
Yes. Yay,
Aye.
we're good. This is good.
All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and thank you for the great conversation and for the hurdles.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Take care.
Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.